Good morning, students. Today we are discussing about the practical issues with the RSA algorithm. Okay, let us see the issues associated with generating the prime values. So, if we make use of Navy methods to check that the number is prime or not, we could examine the divisibility by all integers which are all less than square root of p. Okay, the reason why we are selecting the values lesser than square root of p is that the p is composite, then at least one of its factors must be less than square root of p. Okay, this is one of the approach. Another approach is the optimization technique. Okay, could be divisible by odd integers only. That is, only the odd integers will be selected to divide the values to check for whether the number is prime or not. Okay, so the disadvantage associated with this type of Navy methods are these are all not easily scale up and not feasible in primality testing of integers that are hundreds of digit long. Okay, so we have two other methods. Let us see. The next method is the Miller-Rabin test, and again it is the probabilistic method, and it asserts that the number is prime with some probability 1 minus epsilon, where epsilon can be made arbitrarily small value. Okay, so this test will make use of Fermat's theorem, and it rejects the hypothesis that an integer p, if for an arbitrary integer I is lesser than p, then I to the power p minus p is not equal to 1 mod p. Okay, this hypothesis will be rejected if I is lesser than p. This is about Miller-Rabin test to check for the primality test. The third is the AKS test, and it is an deterministic test for primality and well known after the originators Mahindra Agarwal, Neeraj Khayal and Nitin Saxena. The time complexity is about big O of log to the power 12p. Okay, p stands for the prime value which is selected, and it claims to fame that it is polynomial in log p and holds conditionally for all candidate integers, not only the integers with specific characteristics. And later on there was improvements in AKS test that run in big O of log to the power 6 p time. Okay, that is an improvement from log to the power 12 to log to the power 6 in AKS test. The algorithm details have been not given, just the points with respect to this test is discussed. Okay. Okay, so this is the few points on generating the prime values, okay, with respect to the RSA algorithm. Next we will discuss the various types of attacks which can be done on RSA algorithm. The first is modulus factorization, second is small exponent attack, the third is side channel attack. Okay, in modulus factorization, again it is the attack type which is based on mathematical foundation of RSA. Mathematical foundation means obviously we'll be making use of the various prime values. Okay, and from that prime values we'll be finding the n, what is the modulus n value, like that. So one way of attacking the RSA is to find the factorization of modulus n, that is obtaining its prime factor p and q, because we have the formula n equals what, p and q in RSA algorithm. So an attacker will factorize the n value to find the values of p and q. Now by using this p and q, the attacker can find the phi of n and the decryption key d. Excuse me. Decryption key d he will find using the extended Euclid's algorithm, because the formula for d is equal to what, E inverse mod n. The inverse of the public key have to be found. So to find the inverse of E, he will make use of extended Euclid's algorithm here. And similarly, he can find phi of n once the value of p and q are found. Okay, these are the basic of modulus factorization. And in Pollard-RHO algorithm, again it is also based on modulus factorization. The integers modulus n are randomly selected. Okay, here attacker will select some random numbers for the modulo n value. Okay, and again this let us denote these numbers as r1, r2, r3, etc. For each of these random numbers, okay, you will find the GCD between Ri minus Rj, comma n. Okay, for each j is lesser than I, you will find the difference between Ri and Rj on that number, and the value of n, you will find the, or you will compute the GCD value. Okay, and this computation of the GCD value will be stopped when he gets the GCD of Ri minus Rj, comma n is greater than 1 for some value j. Okay, greater than 1, why? Because that means greater than 1 means the GCD of Ri minus Rj, comma n are not co-prime to each other. Okay, and this happens when Ri minus Rj is a multiple of p or q. We have the two prime numbers p or q, and when we find the value Ri minus Rj, that value is a multiple of either the p or q. And this is possible if and only if we have Ri mod p equals Rj mod p. Ri mod p equals Rj mod p. If this condition is satisfied, okay, then the finding the GCD of Ri minus Rj, comma n, which is greater than 1, can be obtained. Okay, so the time complexity associated with this is big O of sort of p value. Okay, the p, various p values will be sorted here, and the time complexity associated with that will be the sort of p. And this Pollard-RHO uses the loop that involves only 2 GCD computations per iteration with big O of 1 per storage. And again here the time complexity associated with the number of iteration is again big O of sort of p. And in the book the algorithm is not given, just the few points of Pollard-RHO algorithm is discussed. And this Pollard-RHO algorithm is a reasonable choice for factorizing the RSA moduli that are tens of digits long. Okay, that is the limitations of this Pollard-RHO algorithm. So what about if we have the moduli value that are hundreds of digit long. Okay, so as for now, there is no such polynomial time algorithm devised for factoring an arbitrarily larger integer that is itself the product of two very large integers of comparable size. Because n formula for n is equal to what? P into Q. We are multiplying two very large integers P and Q, which is of very large integers, and its product is the n value. So to factor this n value, no polynomial time algorithm has been devised so far. Okay. The best known factorization algorithm, if we consider other factorization algorithm, okay, we have the time complexity associated with that. We have quadratic sieve, the time complexities of big O of e to the power 1 plus big O of 1 square root of ln n multiplied with ln n. So like that we have the for the elliptic curve also the time complexity, and general number feed sieve method for that also time complexity is given here. Okay, this is about few other algorithms than the Pollard RHO algorithm. Okay, now let us see the parallel processing method, okay, used in modulus factorization, another technique. So with available factorization algorithm, the horsepower to factorize a 600 bit modulus is about 800 MIP years. The time required to factorize the 600 bit modulus value. Okay, MIP means 1 MIP year is the amount of processing power made available by one machine running continuously for a year and executing 1 million instructions per second. That is the meaning of MIP. Okay, that is on a single machine. What was the amount of processing power was made available and executing 1 million instructions per second, okay, on a single machine. This is with respect to 1 MIP year. Okay, so this translates to a completion time of 20 years on today's mid-range desktop. Okay, this is the time complexity, okay, with available factorization algorithm in today's days. So one option is to use the parallel processing, which parallelize the factorization algorithm and employs tens or hundreds of high-end machines to obtain the results in few weeks. Okay, that is the advantage of parallel processing. Okay, so these are the points with respect to the modulus factorization. Next, let us see the another type of the attack which can be performed on RSA, that is the small exponent attack. Okay, now let us see. We have a person who wishes to send messages to three persons. Okay, persons. He wants to send the message M, and all the three persons have the same key 3. Okay. Now the RSA moduli for three persons would almost certainly be different. Yes, because depending on the values of P and Q chosen, the value of N also varies. So let these be n1, n2 and n3 are the modulus values available with 3% respectively. And we can find the capital N equals the multiplication of all the modulus n1, n2 and n3. Okay, and if we consider the Chinese remainder theorem, now let us suppose an attacker eavesdrop upon the ciphertext. I have the three ciphertext C1, C2, C3, and these are related to the message M. I can relate this ciphertext with the message M, okay, and the modulus value available with the three persons. Okay, now I have the ciphertext C1 equals M cube mod N1, C2 equals M cube mod N2, and C3 equals M cube mod N3. So we have established the relationship here between the ciphertext with the message and the modulus. Message M is common here. Only N1, N2, N3 are different. And using this, we have the ciphertext C1, C2, C3, the relationship established. Okay. Now, we know that according to the Chinese remainder theorem, the modulus value N1, N2 and N3 must be what? Co-prime to each other. They should be the relative prime numbers. Okay. They all are relatively prime number. Otherwise, it is not possible to establish the relationship like this. So, once we know the value of M cube mod N1, M cube mod N2 and M cube mod N3, here the Chinese remainder theorem is used to reconstruct M cube mod capital N. We have capital N equals what? N1 into N2 into N3. Okay, and also the values M should be lesser than N1, M should be lesser than N2 and M should be lesser than N3. So obviously I'll be having M cube must be lesser than capital N. So from this we can tell M cube mod N equals M cube, okay, M cube mod capital N equals M cube. So I can obtain small m equals what? Okay, M cube mod capital N to the power 1 by 3. Okay, the power 3 will get shifted onto the LHS. Okay, I have the formula for M cube on the RHS will be reduced as M, and the 3 will be shifted to the LHS, that will become 1 by 3. So, that is here the encryption key used is E is equal to 3. An obvious attack with an encryption key equals to 3 occurs if an attacker knows or guesses that the message small m must be lesser than capital N 1 by 3, capital N to the power 1 by 3. Okay, so in this case the operation, the cube root modulo n, I can write n to the power 1 by 3 as cube root of capital N. So the operation cube root modulo n on the ciphertext reduces to the regular algebraic cube root of an integer. Okay, that is the advantage of this. These are the points with respect to small exponent attack. Okay. So next, the third method is the side channel attack. Side channel attack can be done in two ways. The first is based on the time and power measurements of a cryptographic algorithm on a device, and second one is by inducing the faults into a device. Okay, so now let us see one by one. Again, all these are very simple concepts. The first method of side channel attack by monitoring the timing and power measurements of a cryptographic algorithm on a device. Okay, now this method is very successful in leaking the sensitive information like secret or the private keys. And this is especially the case for the embedded devices such as the smart card. It is applied basically on the embedded devices. Okay, but generally it is not possible for an attacker to inspect the contents of the registers and RAM during the smart card operation. Okay, so however, there is inexpensive off-the-shelf equipment available that enables him or her to connect a smart device via probes to the equipment that can accurately monitor the variables such as timing and power consumption. And since these attacks accesses such a channels, okay, they are referred to as side channel attacks. And the side channels from the embedded devices are less noisy since cryptographic operations are usually performed with little interference from other operations or processes within the embedded device. Okay, that is one more advantage for an attacker. Now let us consider we have the code here where we have the values of D, N and C. Okay, D for the private key used at the time of decryption, and C is the ciphertext, and N is the modulus N value. We have the formula C to the power D mod N to obtain the plain text at the time of decryption. And we have the decryption key which is of the size equal to k, where k is congruent to log to the base 2n is the key size. And here we have initially assigned the ciphertext C to the x variable, and using the for loop we are performing the square operation. Okay, for the I value equal to k minus 2 until it is greater than or equal to 0, decrease the value of the I and compute the square operation where x equal to x square mod n. Okay, the square operation is performed here inside the loop, whereas to perform the multiply operation we have the condition depending on whether di equals 1. We know that by using the square and multiply technique, okay, the decryption key can be represented as in the binary representation in terms of zeros and ones, and wherever the positions, okay, in that binary representation is 1, we will be selecting those positions for the multiplication purpose. So that is applied here. If di equals 1, where I stands for the particular position of the ciphertext, positions in the decryption key. Okay, so we are performing the multiplication operation, that is where x equals x into c mod n. Finally return the value of x. This is the implementation of the square and multiply with condition multiply. So now according to this code, the decryption key is assumed to be k-bit integer with the most significant bit equals to 1. Okay, and here the square operation is executed in each operation, in each iteration of the for loop, but the multiplication operation is skipped if the condition, that is if the corresponding bit in the decryption D is a 0. That is, here we have the condition. This is known as the conditional execution of this, okay, of this type may be exploited by an attacker to deduce the position of ones in a D. At what position the value 1 is present in a decryption key D can be easily found by the attacker. So how can you do? That is, an attacker may carefully monitor the power consumed by the smart card over the duration of the decryption. Okay. If the power consumption characteristics of the square and multiply operations are dissimilar, then the attacker can identify the iterations during which the multiply operation is skipped. Right? So you can find the difference between the values present in the various positions of the decryption key depending on what? The power consumption characteristics during the square and multiply operations, if they are differing. Okay, so we have the diagram here which shows the values of 1 and 0 during the decryption operation. Okay, with respect to the code what we have here in 6.6. You can easily find ones and zeros where it is depending on the power consumption during the each iterations. So from this the attacker can readily deduce the position of ones in the decryption key D, as we are seeing here in the figure 6.7. Okay, there is a variations of power, right, in each of the iterations. So this operations involves module n reduction again, as we know, and if the result obtained after the multiplication or square operation is less than n, okay, then no reduction is required. For the smaller values, no reduction method is required. Okay, so hence the time for multiplication and squaring are not constants, but it depends on the input C. Okay, here using the power consumption you can find the position of 1, okay, the value for the value 1, what is the corresponding position in the decryption key, you can very easily find using the power consumption technique. And for the time requirement, for the time required for multiplication squaring, okay, it is not constant because it depends on what, again, the what type of the ciphertext is given. So the attacker may experiment with different inputs C and also with different decryption keys, okay, using which he can or he is available with the further insights about the timing and power requirements values. So one of the solution to the above attack using the side channel based on timing and power consumption. Okay, here in the above code, here in the 6.6, the square operation was performed here in the for loop and multiply based on if condition. Okay, outside. So now another method to avoid that type of the disadvantage here is within the for loop. Now we have the square and multiply operation. Now the multiply operation is unconditional. Before it was conditional, now it is unconditional multiply operation. We have both square and unconditional multiply operation in the for loop only. Okay, the multiplication is done and it is assigned to the variable y within the for loop. Okay, and afterwards if di is equal to 1, x is equal to y is assigned. Here just assignment of y value to the x is done based on di is equal to 1. But multiplication is, there is no condition for multiplication. It is executed in each of the iteration of the for loop. Okay, so that is in each iteration regardless of the value of the bit in D, which is inspected during that particular iterations, the multiplication is performed. Now the attacker will be unable to launch a successful side channel attack based on the timing and power measurements. So this is the one of the approach to overcome the attack using the side channel attack, which is based on timing and power consumption. Okay, the code 6.8 can be used. Now let us see again further what will be the disadvantage later of this algorithm. The second method of the side channel attack is by inducing the transient faults. Okay, the first method was using the timing and power consumption. The second method is by inducing the transient faults into the chip in a smart card. So here what happens? The radioactive particles produced by the heavy metals such as uranium, thorium caused electronic hardware to malfunction. It makes the hardware to malfunctions due to the induced faults. And these metals were present in very tiny quantities in the package material around the chip and caused bits in a processor to randomly flip. This is how it malfunctions. Okay, it flips the bits in a processor randomly. So since the sophisticated techniques, including those using highly focused laser beams, have been used to target very specific parts of an embedded processor at specific points during program execution of a given operation. Okay, so inducing a fault will make the device to malfunction. Okay, so one more disadvantage of inducing a fault is it will manipulate the voltage supply or the clock to a smart card. Obviously, the smart card requires the external voltage supply and an clock input. So glitches in every execution may occur when very high or low clock frequencies are applied, or when the spikes in the voltage supply are introduced. So effect of such input may cause the instructions to be skipped and data to be corrupted. Okay, by the usage of injecting the faults to the device, especially with the embedded device. Okay, so now the question here is, we discussed in the second method, that is in the first method, the side channel using the time and power consumption. We discussed one code, how an attacker can find, okay, the position of the ones in a decryption key, even though we have the code here using the square and multiply operation. And to avoid such a disadvantage, we had one more modified code where there was no condition for multiplying operation. Unconditional multiply operation was there. So even though we have this, what is the, how can attacker, okay, attack on the RSA algorithm? That is the basic question here we will come across is, how does the induction of a fault help the attacker to deduce the key value? Okay, we have discussed the second technique, the injecting the faults. So that faults how help an attacker to deduce the key value. Okay, so that is in the figure 6.8, that is this code. Okay, the modified version of the figure 6.6. Here what happens, again this is the code, implementation of the square and multiply algorithm with unconditional multiply operation. Now suppose the attacker injects a fault in the system during the multiply step of a certain iteration. inside the for loop only this multiplication operation is performing. Okay, so due to the fault, the result of the multiply operation will become erroneous. So if the bit of a decryption key during that iteration is a 0, then the multiply instruction is superfluous and will not affect the final decrypted output, because the bit with the 0 value will not be considered for the multiplication. Okay, and even though your multiplication operation is performed in each of the for loop, the assignment of the value y equal to x is depend on di value. If di value is equal to 1, then only x is assigned with the y value. Okay, so however, if the bit of the decryption key during that iteration is a 1, the multiply instruction is necessary and an error in it will lead to a faulty decrypted value. Okay, due to this code di, if di is equal to 1, x will be equal to y will be done. So but here due to the fault injected by the attacker, this value will be with the error. So now to obtain the decryption key, this logic or this experiment would have to be repeated d times. That is the complexity of this algorithm to obtain the decryption key by an attacker. So each time a fault is injected in a multiply instruction of a different iterations. In each iteration the fault will be injected. So the result of the decryption is compared to the correct value without the faults. Okay, comparison will be done. If the result does not match the correct value, the attacker infers that the bit of the decryption key is a 1. Okay, after injecting the fault values in each of the iteration, okay, the value will be compared with the correct value. If there is no match, he will come to know that at that particular bit the decryption key is a 1, because it is running inside the loop using the I value. I represent the position of the decryption key. For each position, the square and multiply operations is performed here. Okay, so in each of the iteration you can induce the fault, and depending on the comparison value with the value what he has got after the fault injection and value what he has with the correct value without any faults, if it is differing, that particular bit is the value with 1. That is the conclusion where attacker is going to do. Okay, so that is again one more disadvantage of, even though we have the unconditional multiply operation. Therefore, for all embedded systems, there is a need to optimize the design for speed, chip area and power requirements, etc. There is still a need of the optimization techniques. Okay, so these are the few points on the practical issues associated with RSA. Now finally let us discuss with one more small concept, that is PKCS, Public Key Cryptography Standard. Okay, here basically the message, small messages will be padded with the non-zero random bits before performing the encryptions. Okay, so now the number and positions of these random bits has been standardized. Okay, so that the receiver does not misinterpret the random bits of the data. And here the padding is also important if the message contains the data that can be guessed. If the data is very easily guessed, okay, so for those type of the data, the padding can be employed or it can be applied. That is, here an attacker could guess the plain text, that is, encrypt with the public key and verify whether its encrypted version coincides with the ciphertext which is sent. That is, here the comparison will be done with the value what is computed and with the ciphertext what it is sent by the sender. That is, here an attacker could repeat this sequence of guess, encrypt, verify. That is, here an attacker can guess his own plain text and he will perform the encryption on the plain text using the public key, and he will verify the computed value by him with the actual ciphertext sent by the sender to the receiver. So this process, the sequence of guess, encrypt and verify, can be repeated until a match is found between the attacker's encrypted value and the ciphertext which is sent by the sender to the receiver. Okay, so now let us see the PKCS1. That is, we have here in this diagram, we are seeing the three diagrams A, B, C. Okay, so here in the padding method, that is basically the public key cryptography standard specifies, among other things, the format of each block to be encrypted by RSA. We know that RSA is a encryption and decryption algorithm based on the block. The message will be divided into various blocks. For each of the block, the ciphertext and the corresponding plain text will be found. So the PKCS will give the specification according to that. So it will give the format of each block to be encrypted by the RSA. So in the figure 6.9, okay, here we have the figure with respect to the figure A. Okay, we have the bytes of the block from left, that is from the MSB bit, should be 00 as we are seeing here, 00. Okay, then we have the byte 02, then the pad value, that is which contains at least 8 non-zero random byte values. Okay, and this pad is followed by again 0 bytes. This 02 value is again hexadecimal representation. And followed by, after 00, followed by the plain text. So here the 00 at the end of this padding represent the beginning of the data section. That is, it indicates the block which is composed of the data is going to begin. It indicates the start of the data section in the block. That can be identified by this 0 before the plain text. So by padding a short message with the random bytes in a block of the plain text, second method is, that is, we can have the ciphertext, okay, which will be a function of not just the short message, okay. Here the plain text is in the figure B. We are seeing the unpadded message. Okay, here just the ciphertext will be a function of the short message what we are seeing here in the figure B. The ciphertext is a function of the short message. as we are seeing in the C. But in the figure C, what we are seeing here is again, we can tell the ciphertext will be a function of the plain text, that is a short message, and also a function of the large sequence of random bytes, as we are seeing here in the figure C. Okay, so what is the role of the attacker here? What he will do? So if an attacker to be a successful person, he has to guess not only the message but also the random bytes. Attacker should also guess this random bytes here because the message is padded. So by applying this technique, okay, by applying this padding technique to the message, we have discussed in the small exponent problem, okay, that is in the second type of the attack on the RSA. We have discussed about the smart exponent attack here, okay, where the three persons were using the key value which is equal to 3. Okay, the problem discussed here in this section, due to the usage of the small exponent key value which is equal to 3, okay, where an attacker is able to find out the ciphertext. That is, an attacker can guess that the message m must be lesser than capital N to the power 1 by 3. Okay, this type of the problem can be solved, okay, by padding the block of the plain text. The solution, the one of the solution to the small exponent attack, okay, by choosing the small value key e is equal to 3. Okay, this type of the problems using the small exponent attack can be solved by using the padding the block of the plain text. That's one of the solution. Okay, so this is about the PKCS format of each block to be encrypted by the RSA. Okay, now this PKCS #1 is one of a set 15 standards for public key cryptography developed by the RSA laboratory. Okay, we have a 15 set of the standards. PKCS #1 is one among them. And this PKCS standard also includes the algorithm independent syntax for many of the artifacts like digital signatures, digital envelopes, and extended certificates, etc. For all this type of the algorithm, the independent syntax is also available in the PKCS standard. So in the PKCS standard technique, we discussed the format of the block to be encrypted and how the ciphertext, how an attacker will fail to guess the values since the message will be padded, okay, with non-zero random values. Fine, and using this padding technique, the small exponent problem or the small exponent attack with a small key value like e is equal to 3 can also be solved. Okay, so today we discussed about the various practical issues associated with the RSA, that is while generating the prime values, what are the possible methods they can make use, an attacker can use to find out the prime values. Then the various type of the attacks like modularization, factorization, side channel attack, and small exponent attack. Okay. Yes, students, if you have any doubts, you can ask with respect to the first internals portion.